Microsoft gets a lot of crap. They get a lot of crap every single year, every single day. There's always something negative that people have to say or think about Xbox. I for one get tired of it. It's just one of the things that, obviously people are going to have a certain feeling about things. And for me, I felt weird about when Microsoft was first doing things like, obviously, when they were doing things like Game Pass. I was against that at first. I was like, Game Pass seems like it could hurt this or hurt that. And then the more you think about it, you're kind of questioning, well, can it really hurt any of these things? That's something that I think more and more people are coming to realize. People are like, well, it hurts developers. And then you see developers go, well, they pay us for it. They pay us up front, and then they pay us per download. So really it takes risk away from developers when they put games on Game Pass. Now, would Game Pass make sense for Grand Theft Auto? Probably not, because people are going to buy that game in such exorbitant amounts. But if you think about what games actually sell like that, which I think Grand Theft Auto 5 has sold 150 million copies or something, how many games do that? So, I think Game Pass is a really good fit for a lot of, different types of games. But I want to get into this because I thought it was really cool, because obviously it feels like, what Microsoft is doing is something that Sony is kind of afraid to do, so I want to get into that. What's up, everybody? Crap Gamer here with Crap Gamer Reviews, back with another video. Thank you so much for checking it out. Please hit that like button. I would appreciate it. I'm looking to get 100 likes on all the videos that I'm doing, again, it's just one of those things that, I would appreciate, because it really takes a lot of kind of effort and time for me to do these, and I don't do them as much as before, but I really like to. So now we get a good idea about the type of things that Microsoft is offering. So Tim Schafer, who is, part of Double Fine Studios owned by Microsoft, is talking about Game Pass and what it allows them to do, which I think really is cool to kind of talk about that, right? Honestly, if you think about what they've been able to accomplish with Game Pass, it means you don't have to sell like a million types of copies of a game. So this is what he had to say. One of the biggest changes for Schafer was Double Fine's acquisition by Xbox, a move that opened a number of new doors for the studio. As Schafer puts it, Double Fine historically tends to make weird games that tend to be difficult to find funding for. But with Xbox's support, he not only had funding, but also had the boon of Xbox Game Pass to put those weird games in front of people who might not have tried them at full price. He said, Game Pass lets us reach people who would have been too nervous to drop $70 for a physical copy of a thing, but they see it and it looks really compelling and they're like, oh, I'll just download it and play it. That's a great place for us to be. So that changes us, and I think it'll lead to us being more like ourselves and more creative. It's allowed me to move forward projects that I had on the back burner, thinking I would never be able to pitch these to a publisher. It's just too strange sounding, and now we can make those games, so they're going to get weirder, that's all. It's worth also pointing out that Schafer isn't referring to Psychonauts 2 here. It was already in development when Double Fine was purchased, but he does add that Xbox support meant being effectively asked, how would you finish Psychonauts if you had resources? His answer was to put the boss fights back in and polish it far more than he'd be able to otherwise, and that's what the team did. Instead, Schafer's Weirder Games remark, referring to Double Fine's future output, which he's not able to talk about just yet, he does confirm that the studio still does internal game jams, and he's got a whole list of game ideas in his head, and he wants to work on someday. He was asked if he's thinking about revisiting some old games at any point, and while he's not opposed to the idea entirely, that's not what he's up to right now. Starting with Broken Age, we're like, let's make an adventure game again, which is kind of a nostalgic thing to do, he says. And then we start remastering all old adventure games, Grim and the Day of the Tentacle, Full Throttle. And then we made a sequel to Psychonauts, which is considered officially a retro game now. I saw someone who was discussing CRT TVs and which ones are best, and then Psychonauts was their demo, and I'm like, oh, it's a retro game. We've been looking towards the past and taking care of our past and acting on it and preserving it with remasters, but now we're really excited about doing all new stuff. We're going to be doing new games in the studio, and everything is 100% new. So yeah, I think that that's really cool that they're kind of doing that, and this is where Game Pass really takes kind of precedent over what's happening, because if you think about it, even if you're not a first, like, listen, Tim Schafer gets paid. His studio, they get paid. Like, and it's not when you're like an independent game studio. Your next pitch is all that stands between you and the lights being kept on and people working, right? So this was something similar that Ninja Theory had mentioned after they were bought by Microsoft. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting was because that's why maybe you won't take as many chances. And if we look at kind of what's going on right now with some of these games and stuff, we're getting a lot of like the same type of games, right? And gamers, and that's why Hi-Fi Rush was such a big deal, in my opinion, because Hi-Fi Rush is this great game that's almost a throwback to like the Dreamcast era, and you won't see a lot of that because and you're starting to see it with Sony too, I think, right? Like Sony used to be a place where you could get a game like Shadow of the Colossus, or some of those other games from Team Ico and things like that. And now it's almost like if you can't crank out something that's going to sell 15, 20 million units, they won't take a chance on it. And Microsoft used to be that way too. I feel like Game Pass really puts them in a much better situation, just where we've seen kind of the ability to have all these different types of games and a built-in group of people. You have a group of like 30 million people that can play your game. I think that's incredible. And I love the fact that they're able to kind of do that and keep people kind of interested in what's going on with all of these types of games and things like that. Like, they have done a good job of getting people and getting developers taken care of. And so I know people will point to something silly like that whole Outriders deal, which, again, if you think about what Outriders really was, that's like one of those things that people want to blame Microsoft for that. Microsoft had struck a deal with the publisher, who is Square. That really has nothing to do with Microsoft. Microsoft made a deal with them. Square made the deal, or whoever it was. It might not be Square, but I believe it was. Were the ones that made the deal with the company that made the game. And it was a poor company for a poor deal. Not the Game Pass deal, but the deal in general for People Can Fly. So I don't look at that as something negative for Microsoft or from Microsoft, because if you look at what Microsoft has done, they really turned games that had kind of floundered a bit, like Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, and they made those games into something kind of special. So, that's my take on it anyway. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel Game Pass affects things? I think the quality is going to be through the roof, and I can't wait to see what the future brings. I will link this in the description. Rack 'em up, fact 'em up, crap gamer 'em up, crap gamer out.